Hi, and welcome to The Futurist Mom. I'm Nancy Giordano, and today we're talking with someone who spent 5 decades figuring out how to raise kids who can handle anything, including a future that we can't predict. Esther Wojcicki, known as Woz to her students and the Godmother of Silicon Valley to just about everyone else, is a legendary educator whose influence spans generations. For 40 years, she taught journalism and English at Palo Alto High School, which sits at the heart of Silicon Valley, creating one of the largest high school journalism programs in America and teaching many famous students today. She was also named California Teacher of the Year in 2002. But what Esther is perhaps most famous for is her own family. 3 daughters who became extraordinary leaders. Susan, who served as CEO of YouTube for many years. Anne, who is co-founder and CEO of DNA testing pioneer 23andMe. And Janet, who's a professor of pediatrics at the University of California, San Francisco, and a Fulbright scholar. So the question is, how did one mother raise 3 such fearless, independent, successful women? Well, the answer is TRICK, T-R-I-C-K, a philosophy that's the opposite of helicopter parenting. Esther laid it all out in her best-selling book, How to Raise Successful People, Simple Lessons for Radical Results, that was released in 2019. Now in her mid-80s and a grandmother to 10 children, Esther recently launched the Parenting Trick app to help parents implement her proven methods in real time. It even includes an Ask Esther feature where you can get advice on any parenting challenge day or night, thanks to modern technology. But here's what makes the conversation so timely. Esther isn't just teaching old wisdoms. She's helping us grapple with new questions. In the age of AI, misinformation, and digital complexity, how can we raise self-directed humans who trust themselves? Bottom line, how can TRICK, rooted in trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness, help us restore our confidence both as parents and as kids? Welcome to The Futurist Mom, Esther. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for being in this conversation. It's rare we get to talk to someone with this much longevity in both the education and parenting and grandparenting space, so you can give us some context about past, present, and future as we are all trying to figure out how to navigate this with more confidence.
Well, I'm very excited to be here. Thanks for the compliment. And I definitely have been around for a while.
Well, you are, but you're still producing, and that's what I was saying in the intro. Like, you don't just like resting on all the laurels. Like, you're still very deeply in this work and trying to help us all with your new app, which I'm excited to learn more about.
Yes, I'm busy trying to help.
You
There's
are,
a lot
well,
of problems
you
with
need it.
parenting out there, and we can simplify it and make parents happier.
Exactly. Love that. You and I share a passion for addressing parents where they are and helping exactly do that. Yeah, there's a parenting or childbearing philosophy called RIE. Have you ever heard of it?
No?
Resources for Infant Educators. It starts 0 to 3, 0 to 5, and then your work sort of picks up after that. They're very aligned. So
That's
I'll send you a
great.
link if you're curious, because I think that there's a lot of synergy between those things. And we've
Whatever
done
we
a
can
conversation
do
on that.
to help young parents is what I'm willing to do.
What do you think is going on for young parents right now?
Confusion. They don't know how to do it. And they're stressed because they think they're doing whatever they're doing that's wrong. And I want to help them enjoy their child, and I want to help the child be successful. That's my 2 goals.
Do you think it's a new or increasingly evident phenomena, or has that always been the case?
It's
I mean,
much
30 years ago when
worse.
I was a new mom, I didn't feel very confident either.
Much worse. And the reason it's worse is because of social media. We all go on social media and we look like what they're doing in Kentucky or what they're doing in Wisconsin and what they're doing in this mom that does this amazing stuff. And then there's stories about this mom that did it all wrong, and there's a lot of problems. And so in my era, you gave birth and you brought the child home and nobody said anything. Your parents came over and it's like, oh, how cute. They handed you a book called Dr. Spock.
I was just going to say, there was advice.
That's right. So if you had a question, you looked it up in Dr. Spock, and that was it. And so then you had a few friends, hopefully some friends with babies, and they would be your partner, come over and talk about, oh my God, my child was screaming all night. What should I do? Look it up in Dr. Spock.
For better or
So,
for worse.
yeah, so, it was easier because you weren't worried. Today, everybody's worried. Sorry to say
Yeah.
that.
I would debate that a little bit and say, Dr. Spock had a very specific point of view on child rearing, and there wasn't a lot of variance, and everyone was sort of following that thing. By the time I became a parent, Dr. Brazelton, I
Oh,
think,
yeah,
replaced
Dr.
Dr. Spock,
Brazelton.
right?
Yes, he followed
Um,
up.
and, and what I liked about the book that I had, I can't remember the name of it, but it gave you multiple perspectives. Like if there's something that came up about your baby crying or a temper tantrum thing, and it gave you like the conservative view, the centrist view, and the really progressive view, and it gave you some perspective across that spectrum, so which I found really helpful.
Yeah.
And I was in the era of parenting classes, right? I went to parenting classes with a bunch of other moms, and not just play dates. And we were trying to learn quote unquote parenting. But I think to your point now, it is everywhere, and they're learning from all these different people who are quote unquote professional moms.
That's right. And a lot of the information is incorrect. And then they get stressed. And,
Right.
everybody's worried, oh my God, does my kid have, and there's a lot of things, ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, this, that, they don't let the kid just grow up and be normal.
Well, and you have done so much of your work in the heart of Silicon Valley, which I
Yes.
think is the place where so much of that emanates, which is fear about your child being prepared for the future, being competitive enough for the future, being able to keep up with all the demands of the future, right?
Yeah.
So I think that your perspective is particularly rich because if you're able to counter program it there, then we have hope for the rest.
Yes. So I have a lot of parents here in Silicon Valley, fortunately, that are following a lot of my ideas. Thank goodness.
Good.
So,
Well,
yes.
Palo Alto High is my understanding, like sort of again the epicenter of so many of the practices and beliefs around how we're supposed to be in Silicon Valley with a very competitive, very challenging environment there, right?
Right. But it's also collaborative.
Built up of your work.
That's my work, yeah. My Media Arts Center on the Palo Alto High School campus. And so I teach kids to believe in themselves and to hopefully teach their parents to appreciate their kids and stop worrying.
Well, so I had the luxury of listening to you give a presentation on this work when you were in Armenia. I was at that
Oh,
conference
in
as well.
Armenia. Oh, yeah, that was interesting. Yes.
It was.
I did several presentations in Armenia. And, I don't know the statistics in Armenia, whether how many parents are stressed and so forth, but I do know that they all want their kids to be ultra successful. And so, my book has done quite well in Armenia.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that
Yeah,
would make sense, right?
yeah,
I remember when your book came out. I mean, again, you have an amazing credential as a mother and being able to talk about the significant contributions that each of your daughters had. And I love the fact that they were able to have this many children. So I feel like it also is a point to the fact that you can do both of these things.
yes.
Is that either or, as you have proven as well. So if you step back for a second and talk about this overdependence that children are developing on their parents or on various guides, how do you describe that or how do you see that in your world?
So the reason they're over dependent is because the parents are overly worried. So they do too many things for their child. And that's basically to try to make the child have a happy life. That's the reason. But in fact, what they're doing inadvertently, I'm not saying they're doing this on purpose, is they're disempowering their child. Because whenever you take care of their problems or whenever you do things for them, the child doesn't do it themselves. And so they don't learn. They don't learn how to even to make their bed. They don't learn. Actually, that's a problem I saw described in an article on the New York Times. Most of the children today don't learn to self-soothe. So they don't learn that in the first 3 months of life. And as they get older, their parents are really responsible for soothing them, because that's how they started, And so then these kids grow up, to be teenagers and adults, and they're freaked out because they don't know how to self-soothe. And the parent can't be there all the time. It's not physically possible. So it's a
Well, it's a
problem.
combination of self-soothe and problem solving, right?
Self-soothe and problem solving. So today in the United States, 54% of American college freshmen are clinically depressed. So the pharmaceutical industry is booming, giving them all kinds of pills to take. My theory is that it's not that their bodies are missing a chemical substance. It's that they haven't been trained in how to take care of themselves and how to self-soothe. And also, typically with teenagers, they become very dramatic. They think that, if one thing happens, if their boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up with them, oh my God, it's the end of the world. They'll never find another one, type of thing. They don't have perspective. It's not their fault. It's lack of experience. It's age. And they have to realize that this is life. Things go up and down, kind of like the stock market. Today it's down, tomorrow maybe up, up and down. So that's life. They need to calm down a little bit.
Yeah, what I think is interesting, we say that this generation of teenagers, in some ways, is more exposed to the world and how the world works. They have a sophisticated understanding of geopolitical tensions and technology and many other concepts, even in the news, than we did. And yet, at the same time, to your point, they feel much less a sense of agency, certainly a lack of control, and are very fragile around criticism or around being able to do it right. All these places in which they're also comparing themselves to each other online.
It's particularly bad with young girls, teenage girls. They're comparing themselves all the time and, like, quote, how beautiful they are. Honestly, they don't realize it, but they're all beautiful. They really are. And I used to tell that to my classes. And I was like, 10 years from now, you're going to look back on this and say, oh my God, why didn't I appreciate how beautiful I was? Because it's like, you're in your prime right now. Enjoy it. I don't care about that little pimple you've got wherever. It's not going to matter.
Well, if their parents are comparing themselves on people online and feeling really concerned, it would make sense that children are doing that too, right? Again, they're modeling a lot of what their parents are seeing.
They copy their parents. The parents don't have to say, copy me. Kids just do it.
Right.
And so it's a problem.
I also have a theory that as families are getting smaller, there's more concentrated energy on, one child or two children.
Right.
So I have three. When I moved from California to Texas, when my children were young, all of a sudden families had 4 kids, sometimes rarely 5, but certainly 3 or 4 was the norm. And now we're back to 2 children, or a lot of families that have 1 child, right?
Well, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that have 0 children. They don't want to have kids. Too. So you see people, honestly, it's so funny, pushing strollers with cats or dogs in them. I find that very amusing. I love to see it.
I have seen lots and lots of that. So back to your philosophy that has developed over the whole course of your teaching and parenting and grandparenting is called TRIC. You want to take us through TRIC?
Yeah, so TRIC, when I first started teaching, I didn't realize what I was doing. I just realized that it was working. I had to have my students help me figure out, like, why are you taking this class? What is so attractive? And it's the kids that told me that I trusted them. And then I thought about it myself. It was like, well, of course I trust them. Doesn't everybody? Because you're doing something, you assume everyone else does the same thing. Turns out, of course, they don't. So then, through the course of a few years, I built up this trick acronym of like, because the question is, what was I doing? Because the classes were growing like crazy. And it was trusting, respecting their opinions, give them a lot of independence to do things that they personally wanted to do, collaborating instead of dictating with, telling them what to do all the time, and then kindness, treating them with kindness. We did a poll in the school. One of my students did this. I didn't do it. And they asked all the kids in the entire school, grades 9 through 12, do they feel that teachers in general are kind? I guess you can probably guess the answer. But it was like 95% said they didn't have any kind teachers. It was because what happens is, a student has 89.4 on their test results. If you have 89.5, you get an A. If you have 89.4, you get a B plus. So a student that has experienced this is never going to say that teacher is kind, right?
Right.
So
it's not without context, right? Sometimes teachers can do that, but they've shown a demonstrated interest in that student along the way, and they've explained potentially the system, right? We don't need to always.
So my system was very different. That's another reason I think they all thought I was great. I gave kids an opportunity to always revise. Whatever you did, you got to revise it to see whether you could get a better grade. And in revision, you learn. So they were revising all the work, all the writing. This was a journalism program, but I also did it in English. Your typical English teacher, you turn in your essay and then you pray. And you hope that teacher's going to like it.
Right.
Because you don't get a chance to revise it. And it's the same. I also taught math. I know the math department wanted to throw me out because I let kids relearn whatever they didn't learn or learned incorrectly, and they got to take the test again.
Yeah.
So my students were really happy.
Totally.
And not only that, they scored really well on all the tests.
Well, they learned this stuff. They didn't just wasn't even about the test score, right? They learned how to solve the problem better.
That's right. So I understand why the teachers don't want to do it because it's just harder because you have to correct it again. It takes more work. But I just thought it was better if kids don't learn as much but still learn what they're supposed to learn really well.
And retain it.
Yeah. So that's
well,
what
in
I
line
did.
of AI, that might be an opportunity for education. So if you go through trick, can you give an example specific? Because also you practice this as a parent, right? So you're doing these things in an environment where other parents are potentially not. That's really happened to me as I was raising my kids with this wry way of thinking. We were sort of counter programming against a lot of what you saw around you. So as you walk parents through this, how do you start with trust? You're talking about from an infant to a toddler to a teenager.
So even when they're very small, like an infant, what you want to do is give them the opportunity to learn to self-soothe. If they want to, most little kids want to suck. That's the sucking instinct. Some kids use their thumb. Some kids have a pacifier. When they can learn to put that pacifier in by themselves, they're learning to self-soothe instead of you putting it in for them. And if they can learn to go to sleep by themselves without you shaking them or rocking them or whatever routine you come up with, you are locking them into your routine because they didn't know about that until they were born. So as little toddlers, running around, I always put them in when they couldn't walk yet. I put them in a playpen with toys. And it's like, you entertain yourself, I'm doing the housework or whatever.
You're going to love Rye. It is, I'm telling you, such the handoff to this. That's
That's right.
exactly the way that was. Right?
So
Age appropriate
I
toys for
was
kids to practice
very,
curiosity.
I, so in my era, there were, babysitters were hard to come by. So I was, the cook, the cleaner, the mother. I was everything all in one. So I needed them to be able to take care of themselves. And so that was that was the beginning of, I trusted them to play these games in their playpen. I didn't put anything in there that was dangerous. I When we went anywhere to the store, whatever they wanted something, I respected their whatever crying or what. I was like, you want this? Let's talk about it. We'll see whether we can't get it. But I mean, I didn't give in to everything. I just let them negotiate with me. I said, I know it sounds crazy, but little kids will do that if you teach them. I mean, they don't have any other frame of reference. They haven't been little kids somewhere
Well, you're
else.
respecting their feelings. Like they can be upset about something and you can just acknowledge the feelings with them, right? That's
Right,
respect in and of itself.
right. So I gave my kids a lot of independence. I let them do all kinds of things that they were interested in. I mean, they decided to take lessons they wanted to take or do, arts and craft. I don't know, lots of different things. They had a lot of choices.
But on the independent thing, so can they go walk around the block without you? Can they ride their own bikes to school? Because we're like, I let my oldest one walk the block once when he was like 5, and I got calls from the neighbors telling me that like I wasn't watching out for him.
For sure. My kids, well, that was back in the days when parents weren't so fearful. My kids walked to school by themselves. They went out of the house next door to play by themselves. Fortunately, I was able to figure out when they were gone because I didn't want to look around all the house and figure it out. But I gave them a lot of independence to pick their own play dates. In that era, we didn't have cell phones, of course. We just had regular phones. They learned to talk on the phone early. They could phone up somebody and tell the mom that they wanted to play with whoever. And whoever would then come over. We lived in a neighborhood where there were lots of kids. So it was convenient. I know today, in today's world, sometimes there are no kids. You live in a neighborhood, you have to drive 5 miles to find a kid. So I gave them a lot of independence also to figure out what they wanted to do every morning. There were a lot of choices. And then I rarely dictated. I did sometimes have to dictate because, you have certain things you just have to do. But I tried to collaborate with them on everything all the time. And including things like, wow, what should we have for lunch today? Or what should we have for dessert? Do you want to help make the dessert? So I wanted to put them in a position where they were always understanding there were choices and they had to decide on a choice.
I did do that with 3 children because I had 3 children.
I
And
had
that
3
wasn't
too.
always such a collaborative, sense making. They didn't always agree.
Let's put it this way. It's chaos. It is, you go to some people's houses and everything is nice and orderly and the house looks perfect. You came over to my house and it did not look like that. And then the kids, there was a lot of back and forth and so forth. But, I also taught collaboration. They had to come up with a plan together. They had to work with each other on a plan, whatever it was. We couldn't make 3 different lunches or 3 different dinners. They had to collaborate on this.
But
And the main thing I put them in charge of was making dessert. They loved it. And the main desserts that they would make are Jell-O.
Yeah.
or ice cream. And if it was ice cream, they got to scoop it out and give it to everybody, or, whatever they decided. I also taught them to cook. Some of the cookies were inedible, but, they got to try. They eventually got to be pretty good.
And then back to kindness.
And then the kindness, I always forgave them for whatever it was. And it was that, and I think that's so important for kids to realize that they can make mistakes and that their parent is going to help them and then forgive them for whatever it was that they did. It's a lot of kids are afraid. They're afraid of their parents. They're afraid of the repercussions.
Yeah, I think and my children will say that they had a healthy fear of my reactions or my expectations around a certain things. And in some ways, I gave them air cover with some of their friends.
You do want to have them have some fear, but not
no trembling.
Not right. Not so terrible that it's disempowering.
Oh, yeah, no. And I think that's just the parents are always trying to find that line, right, between independence, but not feeling like they feel abandoned or feel like they're kind, but also we're putting in boundaries, like trying to find all that. So you have an app now that is trying to help parents in day-to-day decision making, right? Doing like on-demand coaching, if you will. Because I think we're in a world right now when you've got all these technologies, Esther, independence, when you've got an AI chatbot, looks really different than independence when you're sitting at a playpen with a toy.
Right.
So how do you navigate this world with parents now?
This guy, Jonathan Haidt, who wrote this book.
And for those who don't know, Jonathan's work, it's all over the place right now, right? But about the warnings of social media.
Right. They should look it up. He talks about not having kids have cell phones or, electronic devices until they're 16. So I unfortunately disagree with that because I think it's unrealistic. So I agree that they should not have any electronic devices until they're like 7 or 8. But after that, your kid is going to be totally left out if they don't have it. And I know the Waldorf schools. Have you heard about the Waldorf schools?
Yeah.
They don't have any electronics at all in the school. I think that's a mistake because it's just like learning to ride a bike, learning to ski, learning to swim. You learn it better when you're young. And if you are prevented from learning it till you're 16, you're not going to learn it very well.
Yeah.
And so I think they need to have the first 5 years, no. So don't use your phone as a babysitter. But then after that, they could have like limited, the schools are using iPads. There's no way to get around it.
And there's some backlash against that right now, too, that are showing that some school districts that were very early, which ours was one, and we were very pleased. It was very helpful during COVID, are having now some, I don't know if it was a learning capacity thing or a social capacity thing, but there was some feedback that maybe that had been too early and too dependent on iPads in classrooms.
Yeah.
And it's about trying to find the balance.
So now I figured this out before the research showed this. My theory was you don't learn to memorize, you don't retain it unless you handwrite it. And now the research is all showing exactly the same thing. So I had my students always take notes with their hands, write it down, and don't type it because it's not you won't remember it if you type it. I don't know why, but that's just my basic private research that I did in my classes. And I'm right. Turns out I'm right.
Except now we're going to have it where I have my phone or my watch or my Meta glasses or whatever it is, recording the lesson and going and turning it into, AI notes, the same way we do with every meeting now.
Right. That is also, that does not enhance the memory of the material.
I know.
So, at some point people are going to realize that. It's just like, I think all over the United States, they stopped teaching script writing,
Yeah, cursive. Yeah.
cursive. And then they realized that the kids today, can you imagine the kids today cannot read handwritten letters?
I know.
That's
It's tough in history when they go back and try and read what Ben Franklin was trying to say.
Well, they can't read letters from their parents. They can't read grandparents. They can't read any of that because they never learned it.
Right.
So the state of California has now mandated that all kids learn to do script, handwriting.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, as of last year. So everybody has to handwrite again. I mean, they ask you to sign your signature,
Yeah.
And
But my signature is more like a word mark than it is actually cursive. It's more just like a character. But back to the world that we're heading into, Esther. We're going to be in a world of not just AI tools, but AI companions. We're going to have smart toys when the kids are little and talking to this toy. To the point that someday we're going to have robot nannies. I really do believe that's going to happen. We're going to have these robot companions at our home. We're going to end up using them to help pacify our children's needs and do whatever they do. So how do you imagine Trip looks like 10 years from now in a family? Or do you imagine your grandchildren? How is it different now than it was with your children?
That's a really good question. 10 years from now. I still think trust is probably the most important thing. You need to trust them so that the reason it's important to trust kids is when you trust them, they then trust themselves. They believe in themselves. If you don't trust them, they then don't believe that what they're doing is smart or right or whatever.
Safe. Yeah.
So I think we're still going to have to do trust and respect and independence. The problem is with AI doing everything. The question is, who do you trust and what do you trust?
Exactly.
Is that a human being? Is it the AI? And if you're trusting the AI, should the AI be trusted? That's a good question. As it is right now, I compare one AI to another to see whether I think the answer's right.
Right. But you have 80-something years of judgment to base that on and have a sense of what I call informed intuition or which ones you can start to trust. I think that when you're starting doing this at age 7 or 10 or 12 or 15, it's harder.
That's right. It's just really hard. I don't know how they do this. So you're right. I mean, I'm like, most people my age are like not doing anything. I actually think that's a mistake for them.
Yeah, totally. For us too, we want your perspective.
Right. But I do think it's important for kids to realize that AI is not always right, and we need to give them that opportunity to figure that out or to understand. So my theory about how AI should be used in the class, by the way,
Yeah.
never alone. It should always be used in groups of 2 or 3, and then the whole class of 30 or whatever number, 35, everybody should compare the AI response that they got so that there's a lot of collaboration and they understand what's really going on. But
Right.
I don't think enough schools are doing that.
No, totally. That we get back to critical thinking and trying to understand that the prompt I gave a different kind of perspective or a different bias or a different answer than the way that you prompted it. And it gives you a sense of understanding the perimeter, or not the perimeters, but the edges of this and how each of us are bringing our own perspectives and biases to it as well. I think it'd be great. So tell me what inspired you to do the app and where is it in development?
So what I realized is that a lot of people read my book, but then even if they read it and they remember the acronym, maybe they have questions about their particular child that they would like to ask. So I have a team of engineers that were actually personally motivated to do this for their own children, and they built the app. And
So it's a
then
digital version of you?
it's a digital version of me. That's exactly right. It's really so I'm grateful, and so it's giving people an opportunity to get answers to questions that are real, that are happening now, with my perspective and my trick formula.
I love it.
So that's the reason I'm doing it. Yeah, I
It's called
still am
Parenting
planning to write
Trick.
another book, but
Okay.
people don't read books anymore.
Well, it's interesting. I think they still want you to have written one. And whether they summarize it here, I think I've decided when I read a book, the one book I've read, I packed a lot of it into the intro. And then if they got the rest of it, great. But I didn't want the intro to be a tease. I wanted the intro to be a summary of all of the thinking because I think they will go that far.
Right.
So what do you want the next book to be about?
Well, the next book is in the works, but I'm working on it. I took 20 of my former students and had them write up what they're doing today and how the program impacted their lives.
Oh, I love it.
I think but also there's another thing that's happening. A documentary filmmaker from Poland has made a film about me. And it's coming out in April of this year. And it includes a lot of my students also. So I'm trying, if you don't read the book, maybe you can watch the movie. The idea is, can we stop all this helicopter parenting where all these kids feel terrible about themselves? The suicide rate among teenagers is very high. And as I mentioned, the depression rate is really high. I can understand if they look around the world why they might be depressed, but it's their world. They need to take over and do something about it. And
Hopefully voting.
hopefully voting. Yeah, but I mean, every single day, there's some kind of crisis. This is a presidency of crisis.
Oh, and showing about all my children, but my daughter, she's 22, and she gets every one of the alerts. Right, so it's not even just social media. She's seeing the news cycle and whether it's New York Times or whether it's TikTok.
Right.
It's
Awful.
Very concerned about what's happening in the world at any given moment, and literally every moment. So when you were designing and engineering your app, and you're looking at the kinds of questions that parents ask, are there patterns and types of questions that today's parents right now are asking?
Most of the questions, I'd better ask to my team that gets all the research on it. But most of them are questions about control. And that doesn't surprise me because parents want to have more control of what their kids do. And as I mentioned earlier, the more control they have, the less empowered their kids are.
Right.
And so, but there are parents out there that are doing a good job. I see them, putting their kids into sports and all kinds of music activities and things like that. I mean, one of the most important things parents can do is make sure their kids are involved in some kind of sport because they learn a lot. And don't be lazy, let them do it. You have to drive them. I know that's a pain. But still, it's important.
Well, and again, and also it becomes really competitive. I wouldn't let my kids do any club sports because A, it's super expensive, and
Right.
B, I didn't want to spend every weekend traveling to some random place for a baseball tournament.
It doesn't have to be a club sport. It's just, the local high school or elementary school's team, or...
I was a big fan of that.
Yeah, it's good. They learn.
But even then, we're in a point now when my kids were left sports in high school and in middle school, and they get to college. Get to high school, and they have to now play on an elite team and to try out for varsity basketball or for volleyball or whatever. And so my boys did wrestling for a while, but then they sort of just gave up because they couldn't just do it intramurally, which I think is also a really important part. Right? It's not always about the competition; it's about knowing your body and getting out there and play.
Right.
So there's a lot of things we could redesign, Esther.
They
I have a
do.
lot of people on this podcast that talk about how the future of education should be redesigned.
So I can talk a little bit about the future of education. I do
Sure.
think it's really important. I have several things I think are important. One is I think kids should learn another language early. The language instruction should not begin when they're 13. It should begin when they're 5. Kids learn languages really easily when they're little.
Yeah.
And then also, kids need to have a sense of community when they're little. And you have to develop that through, they can read collaboratively or do writing stories together or
The community in the classroom.
that's right. Collaboration in the classroom, collaboration outside on the playground, but they should focus on collaboration. That's what we all need to do, and that's what we're not doing enough of.
Right. Do you think it's because it's just the classrooms are still set up to be completely competitive, or because they just don't feel like that's what they're focusing on?
I think what it is, that if you look at the traditional style of teaching, it's number one, sit down in your seat, do your work by yourself.
Quietly, yeah.
Quietly.
By yourself, right?
No, all collaboration is seen as cheating.
Right.
And so we have to break that model. And what companies in the world do we have where people just sit at their desk all day and never talk to their coworker?
Well, unfortunately, that does happen more than we think, but I think that's also a problem.
Well,
yeah.
Those companies are not the most successful.
Right.
We all need, 2 brains are better than 1. Working together is an important skill.
Well, especially when we're learning. Like, I worked with my first AI startup 10 or 11 years ago, and we were all on the edge. Like, we were figuring it out. I think that Susan, your daughter, I remember being a proponent of the FIO job, the figure it out job.
Yes.
And to learn the capacity to figure it out. And we were trying to do that, but we were all trying to do that separately. And we felt like we couldn't go and ask laterally of our startup peers, which I think made it so much more lonely and harder than it needed to be. And we were trying to shift that culture even with just 22 people. But it was, mostly men, very few women. And they found that more challenging.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes, I like this. Figure it out, FIO.
Yeah, I thought that was Susan. Somebody was quoted her as the part of that.
She kind of grew up with that. It was
exactly.
Figure it out, and
exactly
come up with an answer of some kind. It doesn't. Either somebody hasn't thought of an answer, or maybe they don't like the answer, so you have to come up with a new answer.
But we're all in this world. Like, one of my sons, people have heard this at nauseam on this podcast, but is an aerospace engineer building a lunar lander. It's stuff that no one's done before.
Nobody's a lunar lander. Oh my God! Of course not.
Right? Like, you can't pattern that on something else. And my other one is helping bring AI into an organization and teaching teams how to bring safe and trusted AI into their workflows. Again, no one's done this before. So you have to have the confidence to be able to go into new terrain. We talk a lot about the confidence to have a compass instead of a map. And so I feel like these capacities that you're talking about and that you obviously demonstrated and cultivated in your daughters made them so they could go do the kind of work that was all on the edge.
That's right. Well, I don't think the world has figured it out yet, how we should all live together collaboratively on this planet.
Yeah.
But it would be great if we could figure out a method. And I think
taking away the incentive to not do that. I think that right now the incentive is people perceive that still to be very much individual, winner take all, zero-sum game view of the world. And I think that many, many parents, led by many mothers, are changing that narrative.
Yeah.
So what do you want what would be success for your app look like? Like, are you just leaving it totally in the engineer's hands, or are you involved?
Success would be, I'd like to have more parents using it. That would be great to have just more, everybody using it, so that they treat their children in ways reflected in this trick model of mine, and then kids get along better with each other.
Right.
would make a big difference. Yes, I'm hoping that will happen. By the way, the app costs $6.95 a month, and I was thinking that is kind of peanuts. It's like one coffee at
Right.
Starbucks.
Yeah.
But maybe there are some people that can't afford it, so I should
I think that's true.
probably look into a program that can give it for free to people that need to have the app for free.
I love that. I would encourage you to do that. Because I think unless they've also tested something, it's hard to know whether it's even worth $695 or $70,000 a year or whatever. And I do think the more that we can get this in parents' hands, and I think that sometimes, the most overwhelmed mom is the one who's also struggling financially.
That's right. So I think I need to work on that with my
I love that.
team.
Okay. I encourage that. I think that'll be amazing. Well, I really appreciate all the work that you've done all through your career, and obviously as a mother and as a grandmother. And if you had a wish for your grandchildren, like if you want to give them a piece of advice right now as they're listening to their grandma, not in an app, but in real life, what do you want them to know?
I wish for all of them to find a passion in life that they want to work towards to make the world a better place. And I hope that they all have the financial resources to help support that passion.
How realistic is that for?
That's pretty realistic for all of my grandchildren.
Good.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. They're all going to good schools, and, they all have a very sort of altruistic global mentality. They want to help out, do things that make the world better. And I mean, we're only here for a short time. Sometimes it feels like a long time. That's when you're cold and suffering or whatever. But in fact, we're here for a short time. So whatever we can do to try to make the world better for other people that follow, I think we've done a good job.
Amen. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'm excited that we get to share your app. It's in beta, I think, right now, or is it out fully? Do you know?
My app?
Yeah.
It's out fully.
Okay, because I went to the app and I think it still said something about beta. Okay, cool.
Well, maybe I don't know as well as.
Maybe they're still gathering some information. But I think, I think one can log on and start using it now. And I love that you're encapsulating all of this work and trying to make it packaged as easy as for you. I mean, we have to go to ChatGPT or Claude and create a rap song with a trick.
Oh, that's a good idea. I should ask them to do that. Very, very smart. A rap song with trick.
Because somehow those lyrics you remember, man.
Yeah. Good idea. Thank you.
So, of course. Well, I hope we get to chat again, Esther. Thank you so much for your work. I really, really appreciate it. And we all have the same goal. We want kids to feel really safe. We want them to feel a sense of agency and a sense of excitement about the future.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take good care.
Okay.